Good morning, everyone. I'm used to speaking to medical students who are kind of closer to my children's age. And so it's a little more intimidating actually to speak to an audience that is probably more like my age or my parents' age, but we'll go for it. So thank you for having me as your graduation speaker. I guess it's you guys didn't invite me. Dr. Masaki invited me. So thank you, Dr. Masaki. You didn't have a choice to have me here today. But I know you have my bio and Dr. Masaki introduced me, but I wanted to just elaborate a little bit and let you know who's speaking to you today. So as she mentioned, Vanessa Wong, and so Wong is actually my maiden name and my married name. So it was quite lucky for me. I didn't have to change my name on my medical license. I did that purposefully, but so I'm the daughter of Akira Koichi Wong and Krista Adachi Marsai, and they're both originally from Palau. So in the photos up here, the photo to the left, your left, is the Rock Islands of Palau. Has anyone been there? I know at least one person has. Oh, yay! A few handfuls went up. Awesome. So it really does look that like that in real life. It's a beautiful place, and that's where my parents are from. I was born and raised in Guam, which is the middle picture, and that's one of the amazing sunsets in Guam. Every time I go home, I didn't appreciate it growing up as a kid, but every time I go home, I really look forward to the sunsets. I think they're super breathtaking. And I moved to Hawaii for college and stayed did everything here in Hawaii. I feel like Hawaii adopted me and I became an adult here. So this is where I call home. So that last picture is not too far from my house on the windward side where I live with my family. So I just wanted to give that introduction. So Dr. Masaki asked me to talk about blue zones, and a disclaimer, I'm not an expert on blue zones. It's definitely something that I've been interested in for a while, and it ties in nicely with the work that I'm doing um, as a lifestyle medicine physician. So that's a fairly new field. I'm a family physician by training, and a few years ago also got certified in lifestyle medicine, and we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. But who's heard of the blue zones? Yeah, I see a lot of hands. So hopefully this isn't going to bore you and, it's like stuff you all know, but hopefully it'll just reinforce some of the messages. And I like the last slide that Dr. Masaki shared about the luxuries of life. I mean, that was the whole Blue Zones talk right there. So if you remember that, we're good to go. Okay. Okay, so the Blue Zones, these are 5 areas around the world where they've done research many years ago, looking at what are the places around the world where people tended to live the longest. Octogenarians, like into their hundreds, or centenarians, I should say. Centenarians, folks that live into like 100 years old. And so they did the research, they looked at different places around the world, and they came up with five places, geographical locations that did have a high rate of folks living well up into their hundreds. Okay, so what is it about these places that makes them special? Oh, and before I go into that, I just want to do another disclaimer. So a few years ago, there was another researcher that said, "Hey, I'm not sure if these guys did their research properly. I don't think they're really blue zones. Like we're not going to really find people living into, up to 100 years old in these places." They looked at faulty records, but actually their research was really well done. They looked at a lot of birth records, death records, church records, government documents. And so it actually, in fact, one of our Dr. Masaki's faculty was one of the collaborators that said, the research is good. The research met the criteria. And so just to let you know, there was some controversy out there, but actually when they look at the records, it was really well done. So I believe it. Things have changed a little bit since they did the research, but we'll talk about that again as well. So they did demographic studies, epidemiologic studies. So again, looking at population health, they had people actually observe, their lifestyles. And so this is all well documented. Oop, okay. So what is it about these blue zones that makes them special? Any thoughts? Any thoughts about what it is that we're going to find when we visit these blue zones? Physically active, social networking, diet. Yeah. You guys don't need me to tell you this. Okay. So the first place we'll visit, Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica. Anyone's been here? Well, oh, yes, we do. We have someone, a couple. Absolutely. Okay. So what they found, exactly what you guys were saying. Low disease rates, strong family values. They do traditional diet. So in Costa Rica, the traditional diet of beans, corn, and squash, we know as the three sisters traditionally. Their water tends to have higher calcium levels, so that helps them build their strong bones. So strong bones can keep you active, less falling, less breakage. Sensible sun exposure. It's hot over there, but they time when they go out in the sun. They don't stay out too long. And then the important thing is plan de vida. So there's a purpose in their life. There's a reason for them to wake up every morning. Okay. And we'll see some of these themes kind of come up again and again. So that was our first visit is Nicoya. Okay, then we're going to go across to Sardinia, Italy. Who's been here? Maybe a couple people. So in Sardinia, this is where they find where the longest lived men are. Okay, this might come up again for another place. And what they see here, Italy, Mediterranean diet, again, we're seeing some themes here. Whole grains, beans, olive oil, plant-based. They do a lot of walking. They're very active in their lifestyle. And walking, it's just part of their life. They're not walking to exercise. They're just moving because that's what they need to do to get through their day. They have strong family bonds. So we heard strong social connections as a theme. And then moderate wine drinking. I know I got excited when I saw this, but and they have a specific wine. It's called Cananao wine, which tends to have more antioxidants and flavonoids. And so that's something that also makes it special. I've tried to find I don't think it's very easy to find outside, but they have, I think like Whole Foods had it. But moderate wine and moderation, meaning maybe 1 to 2 glasses, but you cannot save up all the glasses to the weekend and have a party, right? So that doesn't work that way. And our next stop is Ikaria, Greece. Visited? Anyone? I have to say, I haven't been to any of these places. I would love to go. I've been close, but not quite to the actual blue zone. Oh, and I forgot to mention, do we know any thoughts about how the name blue zones came about? Circled it in blue? Close, yeah, exactly. When they were doing the research and they were going, okay, they used a blue marker on the map and they said, here's a 100-year-old, here's a 100-year-old, here's 100, and then that whole area kind of got blue dots, and that's how it became blue zone. So nothing fancy about it. So in Greece, we'll see it's the same Mediterranean diet. They drink a lot of herbal teas, which have good antioxidants for you. They have, well, I like this one, regular napping for heart health. Who likes to take regular naps? Yeah. When I was in residency, one of our residents, and this was over 20 years ago, one of the residents came up with a proposal to have nap time built into our day, especially when we're working in the hospitals. Back then, there was no limit on how many hours you could work. Like now, the residents, it's like you can't work more than 80 hours a week, which is 2 full-time jobs. Back when we were residents, there was no limit. It could be 100+ hours. And so he proposed to the faculty, hey, sleep is really important. We don't get a whole lot. Napping, there's actually evidence to show that taking naps could be really beneficial. And back then, everybody just kind of laughed at him and were like, you just want to take a nap, you just want to get some sleep in. But actually, it's true that it can be very beneficial for your health. Um, and there's like some medical schools where maybe they don't intend it to be for nap time, but they have like student lounges, and there's some places that actually have beds where students can sleep during the day and kind of recharge and re-energize. Okay. And then a couple more things listed there. Again, the same themes that we're seeing. I'm thinking we have a lot more people that have been to Okinawa. Yeah. Oh, not as many as I thought. Okay. I'm still waiting to go JABSOM. We have a pretty strong relationship with medical schools in Okinawa. I haven't been invited yet to attend to go on one of those trips. I'm waiting. Um, but so Sardinia has the longest lived men. Okinawa has the longest lived women. And they should get some kind of like match.com to get them together. Um, So we also see that they have a strong sense of purpose. It's called ikigai. Another reason to get up in the morning, even after you retire from your job. What is it that you get up in the morning and you look forward to doing? What is your purpose? What is your responsibility? That continues. They have a plant-based diet rich in sweet potatoes, which we're all familiar with, the beautiful purple sweet potatoes, tofu, also Goya bitter melon is a big part of the diet. And have you heard of harahachi-bu? Yeah, I see a lot of head nods. Eating till we're 80% full. Yeah. I'm not so, I'm probably guilty of not doing this very often. Um, my husband tries to do it, but he can't stop. He tries to say it and then he just won't stop at 80%. But has to do with like, eating smaller meals, being mindful, right? Instead of how maybe in our fast-paced world, we're eating so quickly. We don't even have time for the stomach to tell the brain we're full, and then we're back up for our seconds and thirds and stuff. And also like when we go to buffets, right? All you can eat buffets. I'm thinking, I want to get my money's worth, right? But yeah, I think just being more mindful, smaller meals, smaller plates will be very helpful. Although I think you have a pretty good lunch plan, so maybe for today we don't have to harahachi-bu. Um, and then we have strong social groups called moais. And these are lifelong friendships from when they were small kid time, a small group of friends that committed to each other. And it was partly for social reasons, but also for financial reasons. Like they might pull their money and then help somebody in need. And it's interesting because in Palau, they do this as well. And it's the ladies that have groups where every month they might put in like $20, a group of ladies. My mom and her sisters and cousins all do this. They'll put in $20 a month. And then at the end of the month, they'll either pick a name or just think about who maybe has some financial issues going on that they might need some extra help. And then that person gets the pot of money for the month. And so I think it's a really great way to support each other. And they do this throughout their life. And then lastly, our fifth blue zone is in California, Loma Linda. And this is an area where there's strong concentration of folks that are Seventh-day Adventists. They eat vegetarian diet, primarily whole foods. And they have a weekly Sabbath, right? So Seventh-day Adventists from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown is their time of rest. They focus on family, on God. They don't work. And so having that purposeful day of rest is really important for this community. And this one also there's a little bit of controversy about Loma Linda, whether it's truly a blue zone, right? Is it more because of their faith that allows them to have those practices. It's not really the Loma Linda, the location itself. Okay. So it's more about the practices of this community. So we heard a lot of overarching themes, some very similar things going on. You guys mentioned some of them in the beginning. So after they did all this research, they're like, hey, these are the things that they have in common. These are the things that we probably should be promoting for a healthy lifestyle. So it's really, and we'll go through each of these separately, but they call it the Power Nine principles. So first, moving naturally, I mentioned it's just a part of their daily life. Like the folks that live like Sardinia, if they're living kind of in a more mountainous region, they have to go up and down the mountain if they want to get anywhere, if they want to do anything. They're not like, I need to get in my car and drive over to 24-hour fitness. It's really built in. So the folks on the bottom are walking their dogs. So it's not so much about structured exercise, it's getting up and moving your body. I do part-time work as a family doctor, lifestyle medicine doctor at Kokua Kalihi Valley, which is one of our community health centers. And we have a nature preserve in the back of Kalihi Valley. And so a few years ago, when we brought up some of our Micronesian patients to do diabetes group, talk about how they can help care for their diabetes, and exercise was one of the things that was discussed, but they don't really have, a lot of cultures don't have a word for exercise. You know, it's a little more artificial, but they know how to farm. You talk about farming and gardening, that's relatable to them. And so just, again, part of your lifestyle to move naturally. I was just gonna say, those are some pretty nice green onions there. Yeah. Purpose, ikigai. So again, waking up every day with a clear sense of purpose. It can extend life expectancy up to 7 years, you know, as opposed to like post-retirement, waking up and kind of like, well, if we put all of our effort into our work and once we retire, it's like, well, what am I going to do? It goes beyond that. So could be caring for grandkids. Maybe a lot of you might be doing that right now, caring for your grandchildren. I know I was very appreciative that my mom was able to stay with us and help take care of my kids when they were really young. It could be taking care of each other, taking care of a spouse, contributing to your community, coming back and volunteering. You know, we appreciate when our retired doctors come back and volunteer with our medical students. They have so much knowledge to share. So things like that. So having a purpose is really important. Downshifting, which is managing our stress. So Americans don't necessarily have a really great way of downshifting. They do it in different ways, but other cultures are more deliberate about how they downshift. So let's say like the Seventh-day Adventists might turn to prayer. We talked about the Greeks and nap time, you know, enjoying meals with family. It helps reduce stress. So really, oftentimes will eat my lunch at my desk because I'm trying to get stuff done before I move on to the next meeting or the next class. But I'm part of our well-being committee at JABSOM, and we had to share a visible well-being habit, something that others can see and take notice of, so that the students, other faculty and staff will see like we're trying to make the effort. And so my visible well-being habit was to eat lunch outside with a colleague. And so I've tried to do that. I've been able to have 3 lunches so far in the last 3 weeks. I try to do it once a week. So in the last 3 weeks, I've been able to have 3 lunches outside. And it's been really nice because for both of us who are so used to eating at our desk, we kind of remove ourselves with that. We have great conversation. We see people outside. We enjoy the fresh air. So that's kind of in the middle of our workday, we're able to do some of that downshifting. Well, back to Hara-Hachi-Bu. So 80% mindful eating. And it's really to avoid overeating. We're a society that's so much about excess. Everything is supersized. Like I said, our all you can eat buffets. Um, but obviously we know too many calories, too much intake can lead to some health issues. And so trying to avoid overeating, we can see a lot of small plates, small bowls. And that's what we should be looking at is kind of downsizing our intake. Okay. And then a plant-based diet. So Blue Zones isn't saying like everybody should become vegan or vegetarian, but it's really making plants and whole foods the basis of your daily intake. So whole foods, legumes, vegetables really form the core of a Blue Zone's promoted diet. And I wish I had someone to cook for me because so you guys got recipes emailed to you? Yeah. And so at the bluezones.com recipes, which I put the link in the handout, they have some really amazing recipes there. And the four in particular that I shared, I tried to do like a beverage, um, a poo-poo kind, a main meal, and then like a desserty thing. I've tried all those. I've made all those myself. Very easy, super yummy. Um, so yeah, take a look at the recipes. There are so many great ideas there. And then wine at 5. So we talked about wine. We talked about the specific wine. Red wine in general is what's preferred. And it's really maybe less about the wine and more about the socialization around the wine. So happy hour, wine at 5 is really getting together with people that you enjoy the company of, and then you enjoy the wine. So the wine is actually secondary to the relationships and the time spent with people. Yeah, because they emphasize no solo drinking because it really is about the relationship. And then social connections. Again, we see these themes coming up again and again. So really surrounding yourself with a supportive network. So think about, they say you kind of adopt the habits of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So maybe just take a couple of seconds to think about who are the 5 people you spend your time with, and what are the habits that you notice about that group? And are they healthy habits? So either if they're not, do we change habits or do we change friends? I don't know. But really it's true, and I thought about that myself too, like, oh, okay, who am I spending a lot of time with? And yeah, definitely we have similar habits. But what came first, right? The habits or the relationships. But something to think about is who you spend your time with. Loved ones first. So prioritizing your family relationships, maintaining those close social bonds, especially nowadays. So my son, he's a freshman in college. He went far, far away. He's over in Boston. And I think about the relationships that he had growing up and what he's been able to maintain, and how, because of technology and social media, they can stay. He's always in touch with his friends from home. In fact, 2 of them are visiting him right now for spring break. They're over in Boston with him. And I think about when I came out here for college, like 30 years ago, we were still writing letters. It was a little more challenging to maintain those relationships, but I have to say, I'm still really, really close with I guess my Moai, we're still very close. And we're kind of scattered, some in Guam, some here, some on the continent. But yeah, So definitely maintaining those relationships is super important. Belonging, so being part of a faith-based community, it doesn't matter what denomination, it's just that going to a place or being with a group on a regular basis and having something, um, a higher power to believe in, to connect with, has really been linked to longer lifespan. So um, this is something, again, that's really important to a lot of our blue zones. So this is just a reminder of the blue zones, power nine. It's about moving our bodies. The other thing that the researchers found, I forgot to mention, so in Okinawa, when they did the ethnographic studies and they visited and observed, they noticed that maybe a lot of homes didn't have furniture or very little furniture. So what does that look like? They're spending a lot of time sitting on the floor. So you can imagine if you're sitting on the floor, you're having to get up and down quite often. That helps to build a lot of like lower body strength, less tendency to fall, right? So it's really, and I think about too, back in Palau, same thing. They do a lot of floor sitting. There's not a lot of furniture. And my auntie too, just she'll like sit on the ground, cross-legged for hours with her back straight. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does she do that? But yeah, it's a lot of building your lower body strength, and it's really good for preventing falls and keeping your balance. Right outlook, eating wisely, and belonging. Those are the main themes of blue zones. So the five blue zones, when they look at them today, unfortunately, there's been sort of the Western influence in a few places, bringing in more fast food places, maybe more vehicles, less walking, things like that. So when they look at a couple places like Okinawa and Costa Rica in particular, the generation now is probably not going to have the same health outcomes that we saw when Blue Zones researchers visited, let's say 20 years ago, because of some of these other things that have entered into their culture and into their space. That's probably making them seem more like the American lifestyle, which is unfortunate for this new generation, the newer generation. Um, what they have found is maybe a Blue Zones 2.0, the sixth Blue Zone, Singapore. And anybody traveled to Singapore? Oh, wow. This has been the popular one then. More people have gone to Singapore. So they're looking at it as an engineered longevity hotspot. So maybe like 20 years ago, Singapore, their life expectancy was about 65. And now they've added about 20 years to that. And some of the changes that they made were, and they were very deliberate about this, they modified their transportation system. They have really good transportation. They made it really expensive to own a car. They said that like for a Toyota Camry hybrid, it's about 150,000 US. Whereas if we bought it, it's about maybe 30,000. Yeah, so it's really expensive. They make it hard to own a vehicle. So they encourage, I mean, yeah, I would take the massive mass transit for that price. And then they encourage walking. So they have nice walking spaces. So it's really about, again, movement. Um, they have access to healthy, wholesome foods, really important. They foster a sense of community. They even look at providing financial incentives for people to live closer to their families. So they've created these like apartment buildings because it's a very metropolitan urban place. Okay. And that's why it's sort of this 2.0. It's not the previous blue zones were very maybe isolated. They lived more off the land. Singapore is modern. It has a lot of modern conveniences, but they've talked about how they've been able to still make it a blue zone. And so they've created these apartments where they'll give financial incentive if you're going to live in one and have your parents live next to you or something like that, so that you can maintain those connections and you can care for each other. And that will help to continue to strengthen that intergenerational relationships because the grandparents are helping the grandkids. And um, my husband's family is from Kaneohe, and his grandfather way back had bought like a plot of land and then divided it amongst his two daughters. And then they further divided it amongst their kids. And so we call it the compound. Um, but it's like six homes that are all family taking care of each other. And so my in-laws, they both lived into their 90s. They just passed away last year, both of them, but they lived into their 90s independently in their own home. Mom was cooking for us actually right until the day before she passed. She was shopping for food to cook for the family. So that was her purpose. That was her ikigai was I'm gonna make food for my family. And then we'd get the call to come and everybody's got, their Tupperware. The whole neighborhood, our little compound is getting food. My husband and I don't live on the compound. They didn't have any more homes available for us when we finally got married and started our family. So we live like 3 miles out of the compound. And then the blue zones, they looked at, okay, well, there's these 5 places throughout the world that are blue zones. How can we translate those 9 principles into other communities? And so they came up with the Blue Zones Project, where they were trying to work with communities to basically make their motto was make the healthy choice the easy choice. Okay, so this is like the life radius. So where you live, we actually spend, they say 90% of our time in and around, you know, a certain radius of where we live. And so how can we bring some of those blue zones principles into different spaces? And so Hawaii actually participated in Blue Zones projects for a while, starting with Hawaii Island and then moving to other parts of the community. And they also did it with schools and with work sites. So JABSOM a few years ago, I was the chair for the project. We were trying to have JABSOM become a Blue Zones certified work site, and we were getting close. Unfortunately, the Blue Zones project ended in December of last year. But we can still adopt a lot of the principles. And so we have a new well-being committee that is really looking at how can we make the place where we work, which really we spend a good amount of our time. I know we do, right, Dr. Masaki? We spend a lot of our time at work. So how can we make it, a healthy place, something that actually contributes to our well-being? Okay, so we're going to continue to work on that. But yeah, there was a Blue Zones project. And it was, I guess what I'm excited about now, though, even though the Blue Zones project ended, I mentioned I'm a lifestyle medicine certified physician. So lifestyle medicine and Blue Zones have partnered now. And because a lot of the principles are the same, we're all trying to build this foundation of health through the different things that we've already talked about. And it's not just focused on clinic or hospital, it's really taking it outside into the community. Because I didn't go into all the statistics, but we're in bad shape as far as health. Like we have such high rates of chronic disease. And we need to do something about it. And just continuing to prescribe medications, or I know there were some really awesome videos about valve replacements earlier. But if we think about like what could we have done something different in how we take care of ourselves so that we don't have to get to that point of being in the hospital, doing surgeries, taking a lot of medications. That's something that always bothered me when I was a resident and when I was doing inpatient medicine quite a few years ago was, I think there's something we can do better. And then that's kind of been my, I guess, passion for the last few years. So this is just showing where it kind of integrates as a crosswalk between what we know for the blue zones principles, and then lifestyle medicine. We have 6 pillars, and it's pretty much the same things that we focus on. The other thing we add on to lifestyle medicine, actually, it did talk about naps, but yeah, definitely getting that restorative sleep, because a lot of our sleep is disrupted, especially in our younger people that are always on their devices, like my 15-year-old daughter. Really trying to make sure, like, put the phone away at least an hour before bedtime, because you're not going to get good sleep if your brain is still going. Your eyes are still seeing things, even though they're closed. They're still remembering all the things you were seeing up until you turned off the phone. So that's something I also try to remind my family. Okay, so just a couple reminders to close us out. It's really not just about genetics. Genetics can play into this, but it's really about our lifestyle and our environment. They play a huge role. And we're not asking people to go from, what you're currently doing and completely shift to a different lifestyle. But what are the small changes we can make on a regular basis that can lead to that? I know I'm really conscious about those things these days. So maybe think about, you guys are actually probably doing a lot of these things already, but is there another small change you can make that might, on a daily basis? So consistency is key. And then what can you do to get you to a healthier place? It's really about having that positive outlook and, I guess, being the creators of our own blue zones, right? Like, creators of our own blue zones, and then it'll have a ripple effect going outwards to maybe first the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? And then they reach out and they touch 5 more people. So it's definitely something that can spread wide and far. Okay. Oh, to wrap us up, I just wanted to say sulang, sijus, maase, and mahalo from all the places that I call home. Um, and I think we have time for
Yes.
questions.
Vanessa, thank you so much for inspiring us with this wonderful presentation. We do have time for a couple of questions. Does anybody have any?
Questions or comments?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm wondering, it seems to me a lot of this has to do with individual behavior change, whereas I'm wondering what the role of poverty has in all of this. Otherwise, you wind up blaming the victim, particularly in this country. And it's really a public health environmental issue that affects all of these individual behavior change. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely something that I'm interested in with. So when I first got certified in lifestyle medicine, going into it, I'm like, oh, this is something, for the folks that can afford it. Whereas because of my own personal background and then where I work with the community health centers, I had my start with community health center, and I've circled back to community health centers, really looking at what is it, we talk about some behavior changes, but you're right. It's not just about the individual. It's about the community and making it easy. So some of the things that a lot of, I guess, community organizations are trying to do is offer like free opportunities, one, to connect culturally and socially, but then you can also benefit by having some access to foods. A lot of folks that might be on like SNAP benefits, so like food stamps, they can have like double bucks at the farmer's market. So sort of a 2-for-1. So like if you have $10 in food stamps to spend, you could actually get $20 worth of produce. So I think there's different ways that we're trying to make these changes more accessible. I know something that always gets me is when I listen to other lifestyle medicine folks talk about beans, beans are so cheap. They're a great source of protein. And I'm like, I didn't grow up eating beans. Like, what am I going to do with beans? And so can we find foods that are more traditional in line with what people are familiar with? And then can we modify it to be healthier and hopefully not cost as much? But yeah, there's different ways. And I think there's big movements in the community to try to make that accessible so that it's not just about the individual. Does that answer your question? I have a lot of other examples, but yeah.
My husband and I are still organizing our Blue Zone walking groups from 2017, 2018. We are one of the very few left. And we're trying to figure out, you're saying that the Blue Zone project has ended as of 2024. Is there somebody else that's going to take it over? Because HMSA has kind of bowed out of
Yeah.
this. So is there somebody else going to keep it going? I mean, we keep our little group going, but we're not keeping up everybody else. But was a whole lot of groups walking
There
around,
were.
but now
There
there's
were.
very few.
And we even at JABSOM, we had our Blue Zones walking groups as well. Stay tuned. That's something because of the partnership now with Blue Zones and American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I'm hoping that there'll be sort of a resurgence of, or kind of picking up where Blue Zones left off. And yeah, so I'm going to stay on top of that because I'm involved with the lifestyle medicine to see if we can bring back, because they had a lot of great programs going on that we certainly don't want to lose. They had the purpose workshops also, which I was a facilitator for. And then we were told to stop because it's like, I guess there's no official Blue Zones project. And so we'll see. We'll see if we can try to resuscitate some of these things that are really important. Thank you. Thank you for keeping your groups going. That's awesome.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Does anybody have a question?
Lately, medical science has told us don't drink any alcohol. This is recent, the dry January, etc. So, but Blue Zones still like the glass of wine. So how much do we have to worry about this?
It changes, right? Some, like, one year we hear one thing, the next time we hear something else. There's definitely science to show that there are some good components of wine. And like I mentioned, I think it's the social aspect of the red wine drinking or wine drinking. And in particular, if you're going to drink wine, have some red wine. But it does kind of, that's the hard and fun thing about medicine is trying to stay on top of how things change. Because yeah, I've also read where maybe you shouldn't even participate in that. And actually, lifestyle medicine promotes, like, try not to drink alcohol because alcohol in itself has a lot of side effects. So I'm not going to give you medical advice, but this is I was talking about Blue Zones specifically, kind of what they observed and what they found in the particular regions was that having that glass seemed to be okay and contribute to their longevity. Yeah.
Thank you very
I
much.
still have my glass of wine on. I'll have one tonight for all of us. Just one, maybe two, but no more than that.
Thank you, Vanessa, for a wonderful graduation talk.